Welcome to CISO Interviews, where Affinia hosts cybersecurity executives sharing career advice, actionable insights, and tips so that you can enhance your career and succeed as well.
Mel, it's so good to see you again. Even though I have to
Yeah.
say I'm disappointed that you are not wearing one of your world famous suits that I will tease it out where you're getting them.
It'll cost you if to get that information. But this is my uniform. This is my so I'm wearing pajamas on the bottom, by the way. So in case anybody's wondering how professional I am, don't care. But I wear my white hoodie. I try to make sure that everybody feels comfortable, isn't scarred by whatever I'm wearing online. And I just like to have fun to showcase folks in person. Do whatever the hell you want.
For sure. No, it was good to see you at Black Hat. I hope it was a good event for you. I didn't realize how much your consulting practice has grown. And I hate to say this, but I only have a fairly vague understanding of who you help and how you do it. I think the gist of it is you help people level up when they go from being a practitioner to being a team leader or go into leadership positions. But I don't want to steal your thunder. Can you unpack this a little bit for us?
Yeah. So everything I've learned in the last 30 years is pretty much now in what I call a framework. And most of the challenges that I've found, it's either with late stage startups or SMBs, is not really having that adult at the table who has experience, no budget, minimal resources, still has to do some extremely incredible project or feat that needs to be accomplished. So with that, I know what I've had to do in the last whatever how many years to get through that, but also get through that successfully. So whether you're a practitioner who needs to level up on how to manage teams, whether you're a practitioner who's looking at how do I afford to do this, or what's the best approach to take to this, but then also how to build out the teams so that leader who really loves to do the hands-on work can level up. But then taking that to another level, because I have experience in startups, because I have experience in media agencies and Fortune X, I've seen the best practices. I've seen the worst practices as well. So coming into an organization, I can probably tell you in about a day or two, maybe the most 3, which I've done in the past, give you a pretty good assessment of what the key pieces are that you would need to do as a leader, as a leadership group, as a leader, and for your teams. So I just do that now all day long.
I see.
I have a lot of fun with the individual coaching, but the team training and the team development is a lot more of what I do.
It's very interesting. And the little that you mentioned, you have a very diverse group of clients, but do you have a sweet spot in terms of the size of the organization? Is it startups? Is it SMBs, mid-size, enterprise, all the above?
Yeah.
And also in terms of the level of the executive,
Sure.
is it the kind of the manager becoming a director managing a team, or is it more VP level, C level? Can you give us a sense of? And again, it could be a wide range, but what's your sweet spot?
So if you were to say, Mel, who's your ideal client? Ideal client is probably going to be a CISO or a CIO that just got into the role, is in a late stage startup or an SMB. I mean, that's going to be, that's gravy for me, basically. But I have CFOs as clients. I have CEOs as clients for SMBs as well as startups. I've been a startup advisor, so I get the mindset and I get what they need to do, but I also get how they need to do it, right? Different than what they've been doing. So sweet spot's a little bit, it's cute, but pretty much everybody has the same problem at almost every level, right? Some of them are more mature and have learned, but others need to be kind of reframed in how they think or what they do, because all of us come in, let me rephrase that. Most of us come into a role or position with the best of intentions, right? And we think we're doing everything right. We're getting the right advice. I will tell you right now, I have told CEOs they're wrong. I've told COOs they're wrong. I've told CMOs they're wrong. I have built out the quantifiable cases to remove certain folks from their roles. Why? Because the understanding of what drives company culture,
Hmm.
what drives results should not be two completely separate things, right? So to me, building that psychological safety, making sure that everybody's has the vision and that direction of how to
Hmm.
get there and why, gold.
Interesting. Well, it's I want to riff on something. I'm dating myself a little bit, but when I was growing up, there was this book that was really popular, and it talked about the Peters principle. And effectively, it's Peters principle. Roughly goes something like this: that everyone gets promoted, based on accomplishments, up to the point where they get promoted to a role where they're incompetent, and that's where they stay, and it's kind of the plateau of incompetence. So it was kind of tongue in cheek, obviously, and it was more of a satire at the time. But this concept of people advancing their career up to the point where their skill set and the experiences are no longer matching this new set of objectives, a new set of challenges, I think it's still very valid, even probably that book is a few decades old, that I'm referring
Well,
to. And from your perspective, and I think that's where kind of your coaching, uh, that's the kind of developer position, is helping people to level up where they feel maybe they may feel a bit of out of their element with the new challenge, and where they're not as well as equipped as they thought with their previous experiences and their previous skills, without giving away your secret sauce. And I'm sure it's probably different case by case, but where do you see some of the clients kind of, or some, whether it's an executive or a team, what are the stumbling blocks where people make mistakes? What are the top three things where people uh, they 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 make the wrong choice or the wrong call, where it's an easy fix for you, something you find will be
uh,
easy to correct?
This episode is brought to you by Athenia, a community where 2,000 CISOs and other senior executives network, learn, and succeed together. To apply for your complimentary membership, please visit www.athenia.com or click the link in the show notes. Now, back to the show.
please, easy. You said easy fix. Let's just clear that one
Okay.
up. There's
Okay,
never an
fine.
easy fix.
Ignore
Okay,
it. Scratch
we're
that.
gonna
Didn't
we're gonna
happen.
walk back. Let's walk back through this because I love this. Right. So the idea of you transition into a role where you're not the smartest person. Hold that, pin that, because I'm going to tie that to those who can do, those who can't teach, and every other euphemism and every other piece that's out there. Um, there are three levels that I look at when this is actually four or five, and you can find them across different spectrums. Right, when we first get started, we want to learn something. Right, we're passionate about something, or we think we're passionate about something. So we go to college, we go to trade school, we go to other schools, and then once we're like, that's it, then we practice it, right? We go to work at it. It's a hobby, it's a this, it's a that, whatever it is. And then we get really good at it. So good that you get hired and hired, right? And then it comes to the point where you're at, where you transition. It's like, oh shit, they're asking me to manage people to do this. Well, let me show them how to do it, right? Let me show them the best way that I found because I have 10, 20, 30 years of experience, right? Leader. Uh, then you get to the point where you're like, well, this, what got me here won't get me there, right? To continue to succeed, great books and things like that I love to read. And all of a sudden, you're a practitioner who's exhausted, has responsibilities you didn't want, and you don't know how to mature out of that role. Well, guess what? First step to recovery, and I hate to sound like this, is you have to admit you have a problem. Either you become a manager, a leader, or you go back to being a practitioner. So first thing that I talk to a lot of people on is if you're not willing to grow, learn, or change, or listen to someone, then you're not ready, right? You're not ready for coaching. You're not ready for training. You're not ready for anything outside of being you. So once you get to that point where you're like, when you say to yourself, yeah, I can't stay up 60 hours a week trying to hack through stuff that I love to do because I really have a family, I have maturity, and I kind of think I like to manage people. Well, then that's when you want to create the transition of how do you get out of your habits, out of your practices to actually elevate yourself, elevate your teams so that they follow you in knowledge transfer and everything else. And that's a transition for practitioners that I love to see. But I also love to see it when you've got a person who's already in the role, but doubts that next level, right? Doubts how to
Mm.
get there. And then I just call them out, right? I hold up a mirror and I say, you're telling me what you see. I'm going to tell you what I see, right? Because a lot of times we're defeated, we're deflated, we have the wrong level of management or the wrong incentives to continue. So to me, that's that's that mid to senior level piece that I love is how do I get you out of your head? How do I get you to think about the things you've accomplished, right? So you talk about Gap and Gain, another great book, right? Where you were to where you are now, right? And then a lot of other concepts like where are you right now? What do you want? What's that North Star? Because that's what's important, right? It's not what you need, it's what you want. I get into all this all day long. So um, most of it is through just having to go through a lot of work myself, having to see the teams that have had to build up. What did I need to do in order for me to get the job done, be resourceful, but also elevate the teams so that they can help me do that?
So it sounds like you have to be humble enough to understand that you are now in a position where your previous skills are no longer sufficient to be successful, um, and two, understand where you are now versus where you need to get, and hopefully with assistance of someone like you, of figuring out how to get from point A to point B.
Right.
And so I guess turning this over, the mistakes people make, they don't recognize they have a problem. They realize they're unhappy, but they just don't understand what makes them unhappy. And what probably makes them unhappy is that they were very well equipped to do technical stuff and hacking things and figuring things out on their own, and now they have to do this through other people, and it's just not something they feel comfortable or effective, and therefore they don't enjoy it. What's it? Do you need to get buy-in from the company to get you in as a coach, or is it usually the CEO who brings you in, the board, or the executive herself or himself?
So I've got a mix. Usually it's a direct recommendation that somebody has made, but most of the times it's I've had a couple clients who've been told they needed a coach, right? And they've sought me out. So it's company driven, but it's not necessarily the company bringing me in. And then I've had companies that I've worked with that I've helped very specific targeted roles.
Mm-hmm.
For example, after they had conducted a leadership 360 assessment, they identified a
Mm-hmm.
couple of folks that needed to be brought in. I don't want to name names, but the company didn't want to highlight the fact that they had a couple of folks that needed help. So they brought me in to do executive leadership training. Then I offered to certain folks.
Almost protecting egos of people who really needed it.
Thank you. Right. And that's the challenge. It really is a challenge of how do you get someone to admit that they may need help? Number one, how do you show them a slightly better way to do certain things that can give them an avenue there? But also, how do you have respect, right? If somebody has 20, 30, 40 years of experience, you really have to have a level of respect for them as well. As an organization, even if you're looking at culturally changing things. So the biggest factor in being able to accept it, being able to understand it, is it has to be driven by HR if you're doing that level of a leadership cultural change. Most of the issues that folks have these days with cybersecurity, IT, is time, dollars, budget, but the level of stress. And that's why I've been preaching for years now how to build resilient teams. Now, that could be in marketing, that could be in sales, but my focus, because of the level of PTSD, toxicity, resources constantly being on, I focus on cybersecurity and IT. Now, the residual is, guess what? You may be half at that point if you're in marketing and you're in sales. So guess what? It's still going to benefit you. All of the techniques are still going to benefit you. You just don't have an urgency like a cybersecurity team. So that's why I love to do what I do, because it's very, very vanilla across roles and across verticals, having been in quite a few different verticals.
Makes sense. Makes sense. In terms of well, it's actually very curious. Coaching teams versus coaching someone individually, one-on-one. The dynamic is very different. What's your advice? And well, actually, before we go into advice, from your practice, how is coaching teams different? And what are some of the pitfalls? What are some of the gotchas? And what's some of your advice for someone who's considering, well, maybe I'm looking at myself in the mirror and I tell myself that I may need help, and maybe it's not just me but the team, because I think the politics come into play, different egos come into play, different agendas come into play. How do you navigate coaching teams, because all the sensitivities get amplified, and some of the agendas may not be on the surface. How do you go about this?
This episode is brought to you by Athenia, a community where 2,000 CISOs and other senior executives network, learn, and succeed together. To apply for your complimentary membership, please visit www.athenia.com or click the link in the show notes. Now, back to the show.
So I handle it the way I raise my kids. I handle it the way I've run my teams. I just beat them. No, I'm kidding. So when you talk about the group dynamics, right, that's where you really have to look at culture, right? And a lot of times it's not about the team, it's not about their function, it's not about their role, it's about the culture, right? So the first thing I have to do with a team, a mastermind group, or however you want to kind of bundle this together, so it could be the same people or it could be different people, is trust, right? Everybody on that call has to be there for a specific reason, and that has to be wrapped around trust, right? If you don't trust each other, why bother? Right? Why bother being in the company? Then there's a few other pieces that I step through, and I think we talked about the 5 V's in the past, right? That I kind of walk everybody through. But as an individual, I have to build a level of trust, and then you have to be very cognizant of the fact that I want you or your team or this mastermind group to succeed. So there has to be a level of trust within there, right? How do I challenge people? Is by being vulnerable, right? Most people are not vulnerable, right? Whether it's the ego, the this, the that, the career, the stature. So if you're vulnerable, guess what? And say, I need help. You know what? You're right. I've been trying to do it this way. It's not the right way. If you're vulnerable, there's a lot of open doors that come through. A lot of what I do really does come down to those 5 V's. And I know we've talked about it, and it's what are your views, beliefs, and values, right? That's what you need everybody to come in with. What are you vulnerable? What's your voice? How do you express yourself? And what's the vision for yourself as it compares to what's in it for the company? So your views, your values, vulnerability, voice, and vision. If I can get a team to not necessarily agree that they have the same of each, but agree that they can respect all of that, then you build out the psychological safety. And that could be done through global disc. That could be done through workshops and exercises on how to really build up the teams. Then everybody understands and respects each other, and they know what that North Star is. That's what I've been doing for 30 years effectively, either being on a team or managing a team like that. And if not, I created that culture, even if I was on the team and I wasn't managing it.
Interesting. So an individual, let's say a CISO, is realizing that they need help. They're at a point where they try different things and they need help. Head of HR is reviewing C-level executives and starting to figure out what HR needs to do to level up some of the executives. Maybe all of them, maybe some of them. Or CEO of the board looking at the team, looking at the organization, and wondering, given the growth of the company, whether the executive team is where it needs to be for the next step in the trajectory of the company.
Right.
Which is, I would imagine, is the point when they're like, well, who do we call? We call Mel. So the question is, what happens before? What pushes those three, like the individual, the department, and the very senior executives? What gets them to a realization that they or the executive team needs help?
It's all about the Benjamins, Misha. It's all about, it really is, right? At the end of the day, something is not working to help performance, product, innovation, or anything else, right? Or there's such a level of toxicity. I've got a client who's got more lawsuits against certain people in their organization, wow, right? Because of specific things. And I'm not talking about nefarious acts. I'm talking about management type of issues, right? Legal, financial type of things that interaction because of this industry, right? So it's about dollars and cents, right? And it's about quantifiable. And this is the one thing that really irks me, right? Is these programs that come out and they're like, oh yeah, we can give you an assessment, then we can do this and that, but they don't give you anything quantifiable to show you. By the way, yes, you're culturally building a safer environment. You're actually culturally motivating people to look at this North Star. The real, and I'll tell you right now, the thing that I bring to the table is a reality check, right? You talked about, and you kind of stopped at the CEO. Sometimes the CEO is the issue, right? So I need to go to the board at times to come in and say, I need buy-in all the way down for us to work together so that I can show you what you might not be seeing. I may also call out to say, by the way, this product or your team or your culture, and I might say, your baby's ugly, right? Like I've done that before. I've completely revamped whole systems, right? Why? Because the sunk cost or the buy-in or the biases that they've existed, they don't have a third-party view. So I come in as a consultant. I've been consulting for, oh my God, almost 30 years. It's getting maybe too much, right? So I've come in as a consultant with no assumptions. So that's what I come in with as a coach, right? I have a mindset, right? I know design, I know this, I know that, but guess what? I want to see where you're at and what your view of that is. So as a CEO, as a CIO, a CISO, or anything else, that's great. But I need buy-in all the way through to make sure that everybody understands it may not be good news, right? I'm okay to share that with you and how we can move forward. And I'm not a management consultant, but I could be. I'm not a technical architect, but I could be. But what I want to make sure everybody understands is not everyone has the same view, the same beliefs, and they're only there for specific reasons. So if you can't build a business operating system or other systems around what you're trying to grow into, or to change how people get motivated, you're just not going to succeed. So I get called in when people aren't performing. They're not hitting their numbers. Their teams are not delivering. Why? Because it affects the bottom line. And like I said, it's all about the Benjamins. I'm going to say it right here, and I'm considering putting this out there on LinkedIn. I will guarantee any leadership training or engagement, if I cannot deliver quantifiable results in a 3 to 6 month engagement, I will give you your money back.
It's a very strong guarantee.
Right. Why?
And with this in mind, how can people find you? Whether it's individual executives who need to level up, or whether it's more senior executives or HR departments or boards, is LinkedIn the best way to find? What's the best way to engage?
Yeah, LinkedIn. You could find me at most of the cybersecurity conferences with the loudest suit. You could find me at etc.limited, which is my
Hmm.
site. But the most important thing that I want to make sure I leave everybody with is um, reach out to me even if you're not ready to engage with me, right? Because a lot of what I do can be, I give away free resources like the 5 Vs and, the Eisenhower Grid and Ikigai and a bunch of other things. I give a lot of things away for free. Why? Because you may not need that. Maybe you just need a little bit of a push and you're a self-driver. That's fine. I have plenty of people over the years, teams or otherwise, that I've helped through that. But engage me when you're ready to actually have an impactful conversation about where do we begin to change yourself, your team, or your company. And I'm there. I don't care if you say, Mel, you need to fly to Zimbabwe. I'm like, when do we leave?
I appreciate Mel. Thank you for being so generous with your time and with your insights. This was very interesting and very productive. I already see a lot of things that you said being pulled into quotes on LinkedIn, and obviously we'll link back to you. And if you can provide, we'll provide your LinkedIn URL. But if you want to send people a specific place, we can put in the show notes. Whether it's a profile or contact details, so let us know. And again, thank you so much. I'm sure we'll see you at RSA and Black Hat and probably half a dozen of other events in not too distant future.
InfoSec World and a few others.
InfoSec World. Absolutely. Mel, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
If you liked this episode, please subscribe to this channel and visit Afinia.com for more information about your complimentary membership, or click the link in the show notes.